Coming up on the Get Lean, Eat Clean podcast.
I went in completely exhausted, adrenally fatigued, just tired, on empty, and then to start this 2,000 kilometer or 1,250 mile adventure. It was always going to end in catastrophe, and not too many spoilers if people want to read my book or watch the documentary. But I passed out while cycling on my bike, and my crew found me unresponsive while cycling. I passed out again running during the running leg. I tore a muscle. The goalpost changed. I nearly got hit by a car a couple of times. All these sort of things. There's so many setbacks, and it was a massive learning experience. But also at the same time, it was also to understand that how not to do big endurance challenges, but also how health plays a massive part in doing anything, whether it's a big ultra endurance challenge or you're trying to run your fastest 5K or lift your heaviest 1 rep max.
Hello, and welcome to the Get Lean, Eat Clean podcast. I'm Brian Grin, and I'm here to give you actionable tips to get your body back to what it once was 5, 10, even 15 years ago. Each week, I'll give you an in-depth interview with a health expert from around the world to cut through the fluff and get you long-term sustainable results. This week, I interviewed ultra-endurance athlete, author, speaker, and coach, Luke Tyburski. We discussed his life journey through overcoming depression, binge eating, and insomnia to becoming an ultra-endurance athlete, along with his incredible run from Morocco to Monaco, generating momentum with 1% thinking, how to get started with running, becoming a high achiever, and his one tip to get your body back to what it once was. I really enjoyed my interview with Luke. I know you will too. Thanks so much for listening and enjoy the show. All right. Welcome to the Get Lean, Eat Clean podcast. My name is Brian Grin, and I have Luke Tyburski on. Welcome to the show.
G'day, Brian. Absolute pleasure to be on your show. I'm excited to get chatting.
Yeah. Excited to have you on. TEDx speaker, event host. You speak all over, ultra endurance athlete. Before we get into a few different topics, perhaps maybe give the background of what got you into ultra marathons, and now I know you coach a lot as well. What sort of sparked your interest that way?
Yeah, I'll keep the long story short. But basically, I grew up playing soccer in Australia, and I was fortunate enough to be able to travel around the world and play professional at certain levels. And when I retired, I felt lost. I was depressed, battled with my mental health. And I had no idea what I was going to do with the rest of my life, really, because I had this loss of identity that now I wasn't a soccer player anymore. So I threw myself into ultra marathon running and ultra endurance sports, and I signed up to my first ever race, which is called the Marathon des Sables, and it's running the equivalent of 6 marathons in 7 days, self-supported through the middle of the Sahara Desert. So that is the short story of how I got into ultra marathons and ultra endurance sports.
Well, you didn't hold anything back, huh, for your first event. Just dove right in there, huh?
I was on a journey of, for lack of a better word, a phrase, self-discovery. As I said, I was battling with my mental health. I was battling with this loss of identity, changing careers, as so many people do. And instead of actually taking stock and doing it in a more healthier way, I went down what some people, seen at the time as a healthy route, but it was really unhealthy, where I dove into basically punishing myself for not knowing what I wanted to do and taking on these extreme challenges. So there was a bit of a dark side to it as well.
And you see this a lot with athletes, soccer, football, whatever. They play professionally. Their careers are, over with at an early age, and then they sort of don't know. That's all they've lived with and they've done for the last however many years. That's obviously something that you went through. And so was running like your outlet? Was that your way to just get your competitive juices flowing and have something to work towards?
Yeah, it definitely was, because obviously you sign up for even like that big Marathon des Sables race. It was in 6 months. I had 6 months to turn myself into an ultra marathon runner. Yes, I was very disciplined with my approach to training because I'd been a professional my entire life. I have a background in exercise science. I have a degree in that. And I've worked with coaching people one-to-one from a health and personal training and fitness perspective for over 20 years. So I had all these tools and this knowledge that I was able to implement for myself to go out and train for these events. And yes, you've got to put the preparation in because you just have to train and prepare for these because there's just you can't really sort of just wing it.
Right.
These big extreme challenges. So it did give me a purpose. It gave me a goal. Like as a team sport, you have a goal each week, you play a match. Each year you have a season and all these types of things. Whereas now for me, it was each event or each challenge or each adventure I came up with was my goal. So that felt like I had a purpose in life, but it was really sort of short term. It was like, okay, I did that one. Now what's the next one? Now what's the next one? And I was still sort of functioning with massive blinkers on because I still didn't have this time to grieve is probably the best way to describe it. This loss of soccer in my life, this change of career. And I just sort of moved on to the next thing and it came back to bite me in the backside several years later when my mental health really plummeted. So although it did give me a goal, it was almost like a band-aid on a massive wound that I wasn't ready to treat yet.
And what was, if you don't mind explaining a little bit about your struggles with mental health, what was that, sort of time period for you and how did you overcome that?
Yeah, it's sort of on and off for about 7 or 8 years, where I really struggled with depression. At times, binge eating as well. I had insomnia for a couple of years, and when it was at its worst for about 6 or 8 months, I was sleeping anywhere between 8 to 10 hours a week. Some nights I wouldn't even go to bed. I would get to sort of like 10, 11 o'clock and watch a movie, and then gorge myself on a tub of ice cream and a packet of nuts and stuff like that, and then feel really low, feel like I wanted to beat myself up sort of thing. I put my running shoes on and go and run for 4 or 5 hours. The sun would rise and then I would continue on my day. So there was this detrimental self-harming behavior of, I didn't feel great. So I wanted to feel something. So in order to go and feel something, I would go and push my body to its limits by running 4 or 5 hours at midnight or 2 o'clock in the morning, ride my bike throughout. I live in England, throughout the small country lanes near where I live, and not really caring what's happening. So there was that element to it as well with the binge eating, the insomnia, and then it got so bad that I couldn't deal with the pain anymore. And twice I stood on tops of bridges, not wanting to live anymore. And throughout this 7 or 8 year period, I went and saw therapists and psychologists, and I did my own personal work. I hid myself from the world. I masked what I was going through. I lied. I acted. I did all these things. And it really came to a head at the end of 2015 when I did this big adventure. I created a 2,000 kilometer and 12-day swim, cycle and run from Morocco to Monaco. I dubbed the ultimate triathlon. And there's a documentary on Amazon Prime, or on Amazon, I should say, about this, where I finished this big challenge and I felt so empty, the most empty I've ever felt in my life. Physically, I absolutely hammered myself, and it took me 18 months to physically recover from this because my endocrine system, and this is something that we can dive into even further, but my endocrine system started to not function properly. So my growth hormones stopped secreting. So it was basically zero, which is a precursor to testosterone. Which is not good as a male who was at the time, in his early 30s. My immune system was extremely compromised. I was just constantly like having little small illnesses. I was just exhausted. My nervous system was fried. So all these things, and it made me stop. It made me stop and let my body recover. And it was in that period of about 18 months where I went back to therapy. I did some more self work and I tried to look at my life. Okay, like what have I got? What do I want? Who am I? What support systems do I have? All of these things that I think is healthy to do on a regular basis, regular every 12 months, every 5 years, or whatever it is for you, or even every month if there's a lot going on in your life, to actually stop and take stock of what is in your life, what do you have, what help do you have on hand to support. And I did that over an 18-month period, and that's what really got me out of this dark hole of depression and the mental health issues that I mentioned before. And I really opened up and I told my whole story. I started to speak about it after I did all that personal work. And then I went a step further and wrote all about it in my book, Chasing Extreme. So there's quite literally everything's out there. So I'm an open book. I'd have no skeletons in my closet. I sort of used the phrase, I don't even have a closet anymore because everything's out there. And it was like the last piece of my puzzle of, sort of self-healing is probably the best way to put it. And so that's where I've got to today. And that was sort of 2018 when that all sort of finalized. The book was out and I sort of finally was comfortable with who I am and what I was doing, what I was trying to achieve. And yeah, so I've been living life and smiling and helping people and telling my story on stages and keynote talks all around the world ever since.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. And that ultra triathlon that you put together from Morocco to Monaco, that was 12, it was like 200 kilometers, right? 2,000 kilometers and 1,243 miles. I did it just for people to listen so they understand. And so that was something that you put together, and it was, it took a big toll on you, obviously, and you did a documentary on it. I'm assuming you don't do anything like that now since then.
I've not done anything that big. I had a few big projects coming up. I had a big project that I was planning on doing a couple of years ago, but obviously with the whole pandemic thing, that sort of stopped that. So I'm still planning some big things. However, my view of my own health and my preparation and taking care of myself from a, for lack of a better word, from a holistic perspective is so much healthier these days. So whenever I do my next big thing, I've done week-long things since then, and extreme endurance challenges since then, but nothing of that stature. But yeah, there's more coming, but my support systems, my preparation, is a lot healthier these days than back then, because I went in completely exhausted, adrenally fatigued, tired, on empty. And then to start this 2,000 kilometer or, 1,250 mile adventure, it was always going to end in catastrophe, and not too many spoilers if people want to read my book or watch the documentary. But I passed out while cycling on my bike, and my crew found me unresponsive while cycling. I passed out again running during the running leg. I tore a muscle, the goalpost changed. I nearly got hit by a car a couple of times, all these sort of things. There's so many setbacks, and it was a massive learning experience, but also at the same time, it was also to understand that how not to do big endurance challenges, but also how health plays a massive part in doing anything, whether it's a big ultra endurance challenge or you're trying to run your fastest 5K or lift your heaviest 1 rep max. You've got to take health into account.
Yeah, it's like the preparation along with like allowing yourself to recover going into it. Perhaps touch on now you're coaching ultra marathoners. These individuals are running races that I'm assuming when you're an ultra marathoner, what are like the length of the races that they're doing, and what's the preparation like? Yeah.
Most races, and this is to, like sort of a blanket phrase. Most races are around the 50 mile, 100K, which is about 62 miles, 100 miles, or you'll get a multi-stage race of 150 miles plus. There are now races 200 miles non-stop that take several days. The 100 mile used to be the benchmark, but now 200 milers, 300 milers are all coming in. It's pretty crazy. But I would say, well, the biggest races in the world in terms of mass participation, 50 miles, 100 miles, 100K, and your 5-day or 7-day, 155 miles in a week, ish. They're sort of the races that most people do.
People are doing this for a living.
Some people are. There's a select few that do it for a living. There is getting more and more money into ultra running. So running brands and things like that are sponsoring these athletes. But the majority is like marathon runners. There's very few professionals, but most people just do it for fun, believe it or not. Go and run through the mountains for like 30 hours and pay $1,000 entry fee and get a buckle or a medal at the end. And that's what people do for fun. I get it. Most people don't, but everyone's fun's different, right?
Yeah, that's for sure. And I'm assuming a part of it's like becomes addictive to some degree for these individuals. Yeah.
Yeah, like I'm putting my hand up for the people who aren't watching and listening. Like I was definitely addicted to endurance sports. And my addiction fueled through the element of self-harm, as I mentioned before, because I was feeling so low and I felt numb with life. So doing big endurance benches was a way of performing self-harm on myself to feel something, to feel alive, to feel great. But then it was just like, okay, then do more and then do more and then do more. And I was overtraining and I didn't necessarily do a lot of races, but I did a lot of our own personal challenges. So I was doing too many of those. And yeah, I see people online and in person, meeting people who are addicted, who are doing too much. And unless they're my athlete who I coach, I'm not anyone to say anything, because you don't know what they're going through. I know what I was going through, and then someone would say something to me and, I completely ignored them. But definitely addictive because, you're pushing yourself. You do a 50 miler and you're like, what if I can do 100K? You do 100K. Like, what if I can do a 100 miler? You do a 100 miler. What if I can do a 100 miler in the mountains? What if I can do a 100 miler, in the cold, in the heats? What if I can do a 5-day stage race? So it is addictive because one element is the physical feedback you get, the challenge, the feeling of accomplishment when you finish something that you go through so much pain, you go through so many highs and lows. But then I think also a lot of people, let me take that back. There are a portion of people who come into ultra running in a similar, not so much dissimilar way to me, that they're running away from something. And this is an opportunity to go out and run for hours and hours and hours, to run away from whatever issues they're dealing with. And they can get away with it because that's what everyone else is doing around them. So they put themselves into these communities. And as I said, that is a small portion of people who do it. But the other side of it is the community is amazing. They're so supportive and welcoming. So it's hard to sort of like not just sort of pull yourself out when everyone else is just having a good time like yourself.
And the people that are like yourself at one point are trying to sort of run away from certain things within their lives. What sort of got you out of it? I know you talked about was it mainly talking with someone?
Yeah, look, it was a combination of things. I got to a point, and this is the only real advice I'll give to people in terms of if they are struggling with their mental health, and it's only because I used it for myself and it worked. I got to a point where I realized something had to change. I knew there was an issue. I knew there was something wrong, and I couldn't keep living like this because, as I said, like I stood on tops of bridges twice. It's like I don't want to roll the dice on the third time. I was very happy that I found the strength in those moments to pull myself back off. But I realized something had to change, and I knew because I was doing this cycle for years, I couldn't do it myself. So I had a choice. I had an option. I could talk to a family member, a loved one, and tell them what I was going through, tell them how I felt, and ask them for help. Or I could do option B and go and see a stranger who knew nothing about me. I could tell them as much or as little as I wanted to, but I needed to talk. And I looked at those two options and I went, you know what? There's no way in hell right now I'm going to go and talk to my parents or my girlfriend at the time or my best friends who I've known for 20, 30 years. I'm not ready to open up to them. So I went and talked to a stranger and started to drip feed things that I was going through and realized actually talking and the tools they gave me was really helpful. And then I went off and worked on those tools over time. So my advice is always just when you're realizing you're struggling, the best thing you can do is look at those two options. Can I talk to a stranger because they don't know who you are? You can tell them as little or as much as you want. Or if you don't want to talk to a stranger, find someone who you truly trust, who you love and you know that they love you. And there is no judgment, and just start to talk to them. So that's what I did. I started to speak to a stranger. I got some tools. I worked on those tools, and then I ended up opening up to the rest of my community and my family, I should say first, and then my friends, and then my community as well.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, relying on that support system obviously is really important, like that you're not alone through whatever you're going through. I noticed your TED Talk Perhaps touch a little bit on that. The title is Generate Momentum with 1% Thinking. So maybe give the gist of the talk and how it applies to, your life and others.
Yeah, so I've been talking about this concept for many, many years, and I had the opportunity to get on the TEDx stage, and I thought, why not? So we are encouraged to always be positive because we know thinking negatively doesn't help. Even from a neuroscience perspective, we can see that it is detrimental, thinking negative and even saying negative things out loud. So naturally, we're told to be positive. When something bad happens, just be positive. Fake it till you make it. All these phrases come out. Always be positive. Positivity is, whatever. But through my own experience in life and during my endurance challenges, sometimes when something goes wrong, you can't be positive. And you can't be negative at the same time. So I'm like, well, what do I do? So I came up with this idea that why can't we be less negative? Okay. So we're not being negative, being less negative. So I thought, okay, this is like a string I pulled on for years. I played around with to try and be able to articulate how I think and the principles and the processes I go through. Because as you know, like in everyone's goes through their heads, they have sort of people say, well, how did you do that? And you can't really articulate it. Well, I just did it. What are the mechanisms? So I played around to try and find what they were. And I realized I used the analogy as like a car. If something negative happens or you put yourself in reverse and you're driving a stick, a manual, right? You can't just necessarily go from reverse and put it into fifth gear and expect to go flying. I'm going to be so positive. I'm pumped up. I'm going to be the most positive person in the world when something happens. So there has to be a process, a sequence to go through from slowing down, going back into neutral, and then going through the steps to move forward. And then I put into a place of, okay, well, what are some of the most negative things that could happen in someone's life? And I thought about it, okay, well, how does this concept apply? If you lose a loved one, that's brutal. I'm fortunate I have lost several in my life. And it's like, okay, how do you be positive in the moment when that happens? I'm sorry, but I just don't think it's healthy. And I don't even think you can be like super positive. Yes, you can focus on what we did and what they achieved in their life. But in the moment when you first hear that news, you can't be positive. So I was like, okay, well, that or I get injured. It's still a negative, but it's a less severity. Or I drop a glass. My favorite coffee mug in the morning, I drop that. So all these negative things. So how can I apply it being less negative? And I use this thing called 1% thinking because it's not about going from 0 to 100% positivity. Not even about 50%. It's 1%. So, and it's through asking yourself these three questions. What happened? All right. So you're in reverse if you're using that car analogy and something negative just happened. We're in reverse. What happened? You're not actually trying to do anything. You're not trying to be positive. You're not trying to be negative, but identify what it is that actually happened. So you can actually know what you're dealing with. Okay. So that is the first element. What happened? How did it happen? All right. So you really need to take it and get an understanding of the mechanisms of that cause what happened. Okay. Like just to understand if your family member died, like knowing that, okay, this person is not here anymore. So you're starting the grieving process. And what happened is they died, from whatever. That's how it happened. You broke a glass. What happened? You broke your favorite glass. How did it happen? Well, I was thinking about what I'm doing later this afternoon. I wasn't really concentrating. All right. This is a trivial one, but it matches with something more like severe. So it's what happened. How did it happen to understand the mechanisms? Now, here's where you went from neutral to into first gear. Where do I now need to focus in order to move forwards? So the whole point of this, it sounds really simple, and it is really simple, but it's only helpful if you apply it. But what I've done with thinking 1% at a time, one step at a time, one small piece at a time, is given everyone a process to follow. When you break your favorite glass, when you get fired from a job, when you lose a loved one, when you drop your phone and you crack your screen. All these sort of trivial things, but also pretty heavy things that can make a significant impact in your life. What happened? How that's in reverse. So you're stopping going backwards, identifying what happened. How did it happen? You're in neutral. And now you start moving through the gears. Where do I now need to focus in order to move forward? Now, that's not positive. That's not like, rah, rah, let's go. Yeah, 100%. I'm going to smash life and I'm going to win this thing. You know, that's not positive. That's not positive, but it's not negative, which is why I call it less negative. And it's just that one thought at a time of being less negative through 1% thinking to helping you overcome an obstacle or a setback that you either created in your life or it came to you in terms of adversity.
Got it. Okay, I like that. Like that. That's a good way of explaining it, because when something traumatic happens, it's like, yeah, like you're gonna it's not just gonna be okay, it's positive. You got to sort of work your way into just taking those next steps to just get out of that sort of state of maybe, negativity. And it doesn't happen overnight, right? I attribute it a lot of times when I'm coaching individuals is like, we talk about one step at a time. It's like, pick one healthy habit to adapt and just do that for, weeks, maybe a month, until that habit becomes something that you're not even thinking about it. Just you do it. And then you can sort of take that next thing. I think sometimes when people try to take a lot on at once, that nothing ends up happening. So,
I think we get caught up in the acute phase of things, like the right now. I want to change. I know why I want to change, because that's important. If you want to do something in your life, achieve something in your life, change something in your life, you got to know why you want to do it, because that's bottom line. That's your internal motivation, right? We know that internal motivation is so much more helpful than external. So you got to know why. But it's a case of, when you know why, you still need to be able to go through the process of what it is you're trying to accomplish. But then, even if you're strong with your why and knowing the processes of how to get there, so that education piece, if you're trying to do everything and you're looking at it from a small perspective, like, change and success takes time. But everyone wants it right here and right now. Not that, oh, I want to be successful in 10 years. Like, the way that I look at things is, if I achieve this goal in 10 years, just to use a random number, like, I will be happy. That will be a success. That will be great. However, the principles and the processes I'm putting in place are going to give me a chance to achieve that goal in 3 years. But I'm also going to be happy if it takes me 10. So I'm being aggressive daily, but patient long term. So I want to try and do everything I can through those principles and those processes. And this could be for anything in life. However, at the same time, it's not about setting realistic goals. It's not about setting safe goals. It's about understanding that to be truly successful, to achieve big goals, as you said, like with your clients, is just take one thing and be aggressive with that daily. Do the best that you can do that day. And then the next day, be aggressive in focusing on what you can do to achieve that thing that day, that process, that principle you need to do, that sequence of events. But also know that, okay, if it takes me those 10 years, those 12 years, that 1 year, that's going to be a success. However, the principles and the processes that you put in place, it's going to give me a chance, if I stick to those, to achieve it in a shorter period of time. And it's having that flexibility and that thinking, in my opinion and my experience. And there's also, certain studies that show certain things like this. There's more people who are being successful.
Now, how would you recommend someone that maybe wants to get into running, not necessarily even ultra marathoners? How would you go about that? Would you for what you did? It sounds like you picked an event. Like, granted, it was a bit extreme, but you picked that event to work towards. Do you recommend that maybe for someone who's looking to get into it, running as To a
degree, it's like recommending the healthiest food in the world. Like, there's multiple. There's not one.
Yeah.
So the ways that I would do it is, pick an event. So then you've got a goal to aim for. Then you've got a target that can help with that's a bit of external motivation. External motivation isn't bad, but that can motivate you because an accountability. You've paid your $50 entry fee, or however much it is. So there you go. You're accountable now. You're invested. You're financially invested in this thing. So that's that's something that's helpful. Joining a running club
Mm.
is great because in running clubs, they're all over the world. Even things like parkrun, free 5K on a Saturday morning all over the world. You meet new runners, you meet new people, you become part of the running community, and it's free every Saturday morning around the world. So, become part of the running community, whether it's a run club. There are so many that are free. There's this thing called Google. You Google where a local running club is,
Mhm.
and I'm pretty sure you'll find one. Or parkrun is a great way to inject yourself into a running community. Find a coach. Well, if you've got a family member who runs, or a friend who runs, or a friend of a friend, connect and see. I think joining a community, being part of that running community, would be really helpful. And then don't overthink it. Like, we all can run pretty much. 99% of that's my own number, but let's just say the majority of the population can run. They look at these 10Ks, they look at half marathons, they look at marathons, they look at ultra marathons and go, I can't do that. Well, not everyone started off with a 100-mile race as their first race. Maybe your big event is, I want to be able to complete a 5K running and walking. That is okay. You're allowed to walk in running races. That's cool. So just start by going out, maybe going for a run around your block. It might take you 3 minutes, might take you 2 minutes. Go and run for a minute and go, did I enjoy that? No, that sucked. Okay, well, maybe you don't really want to run. But if you're like, actually, this is really cool. Okay, the next day, can I run 3 minutes? Can I run 4 minutes? Stuff like that. So don't overthink it, I guess, is probably the simplest answer. And hopefully there's been a few ideas for people to try if someone does want to get into running.
This might be a extreme question or broad, but what some of the things that you've learned through your experience with running that you wish you knew when you were, maybe 5-6 years ago, that you apply now, that you've learned?
Yeah, in terms of life or for running?
Let's say for running. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, let's say for running. Well, I definitely learned that it's important to have a nutrition plan and a hydration plan, rather than just say, okay, I know I need to have 300 calories an hour if I'm, say, doing a marathon or an ultra marathon. And sometimes I've known this from my own education, my own background, and working with other athletes, but I didn't always necessarily have this plan to know, okay, these foods are this amount, this is that, and I'm going to have these foods in the first, few hours, and I'm going to have these foods in the next few hours, and all these sort of things. So really properly having a nutrition plan and a hydration plan, knowing how much electrolytes you're having, how much fluid you're having, dependent on the temperature and the climate and things like that. So I knew what the body needed, but it was actually having a out and out proper plan. And it's not one necessarily was all about the numbers and you have to do this every minute or whatever, but it's just sort of having a loose plan, knowing, okay, this is then, this is then, this is then, and that's been really helpful. And I think also it's kind of tricky because I've been an athlete my entire life. There's definitely sort of elements of, people say, oh, how important recovery is and things like that. That wasn't really for me because as an athlete, I knew how helpful recovery was. But I guess in terms of running, it was the different types of sessions, how they can improve your fitness, your speed, your stamina, your endurance, all these types of things as well. So diving down into the science of that a little bit more. And then that's after I did side of that, I moved into a little bit more focused on running and ultra running, when I did that maybe about 10 years ago. But yeah, so I guess there's a couple of things that I've really learned, through my running journey.
And I noticed, you've run down Mount Everest. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Tell me, tell me a little bit about that. I'm curious.
Yeah, no, it's a good one. It's a good catch line, right?
Yeah.
It's a good, So I went out to Nepal, to run the world's highest ultra marathon, which is down Mount Everest from just near base camp. So the hardest part of the whole race is getting to the start line, because you're spending 12 days trekking up to base camp, which is 5,400 meters. So what's that? I don't know, it must be 18,000 feet, maybe more.
How long did that take? How long did that take to get to base camp, you said?
12 days.
12
So we
days.
had some acclimation days as well. It's about 40, 40 miles to go up there. But what I did initially was I reached out to the race director and said, hey, like, I'm this adventure dude. I do these crazy things. Are there any Nepalese ultra runners who speak somewhat English, who live high up in the rural mountains that I could maybe go and stay with and learn from and just have like this really cool adventurous experience? Very happy to pay my way or the rest of it. I'm not looking to commercialize it or anything. I just want to have a cool adventure. And he wrote back and was like, yeah, well, I know two guys who speak a bit of English. That was cool. So I actually spent like 5 weeks high up in the rural mountains where like there are no tourists that go there. You know, it's not on the tourist trail. We're talking like two buses, 12 hours in total, plus a full day hike over the mountains and villages with like 2 and 3 like mud shacks. No running water, no electricity, no toilets, nothing like this. Sleeping next to buffaloes and chickens and goats. Holes in the living room floor.
How many weeks did you do that for?
5 weeks.
So you went there and you were with that, what is it called? I'm sorry. The individual who takes you up and down the mountain.
A Sherpa.
Sherpa, that's right. So you were with a Sherpa for that long?
Well, yeah, one of them worked as a Sherpa, but they were just runners.
Okay.
So I lived with two families, and two runners. So I spent like 3 weeks with one and 2 weeks with another. And then we flew to, back to Kathmandu, or we got back to Kathmandu, I should say, and then flew up to Lukla, which is the airport, when you go up to Everest. And then we spent 12 days trekking up to Everest, and then ran back down. It took me 12 hours, I think it was. I struggled with a parasite called Giardia from untreated water. And so I didn't eat or drink anything for the final 4 days of the trek. I was literally vomiting and I had diarrhea, which is water, basically water from my muscles, because I was putting nothing in my body and I was just losing weight. My arms and my legs were absolutely ripped because just the water from my muscles is just getting dispelled because of this parasite. The body's trying to flush it out. And then that was like for like 4 days before the event started. And then I got up in the morning of the race and fumbled my way down the mountain to finish the world's highest ultra marathon, covering just over 40 miles in 12 hours.
Wow. That's quite the story.
Yeah.
When you're going through something like that, how do you get through it mentally?
That's a great question. And it's one of the things that I do a lot with my athletes is the mental strength side of things. And I mentor athletes all around the world, mainly elite athletes from sort of like high school and college age groups who are sort of 1 or 2 steps away from being professional or 1 or 2 steps away or 1 step away from going to the Olympics at various sports. And I mentor them in terms of a part of it is mental strength, but it's also just the lifestyle of how to achieve your best, because I've been there and I've done that. But the mental strength side of things it's a really interesting piece, because a lot of people think, okay, if I'm not a professional athlete, I don't need to like do visualization or mental strength training. But here's the thing, like we're all high performers. You know, we're all high performers. High performance for me is just trying to achieve your best, trying to achieve one little bit more above your best. So there's a kid at school and he gets 4 Ds 1 year at the end of his report card. And then the next year he gets 2 Cs and a D. He's a high performer because he's achieved more than what he's achieved before. So he's performing at a high level. So we can train 3 things: our body, our craft, so a skill. If you're an athlete, if you're a salesperson, you can train your sales skills, stuff like that. If you're in marketing, you can become a better marketer by training that. We can train our mind, but training our mind can dictate whether or not we actually go through with training our skills, our craft, or we're actually training our body to stay healthy. So I think it's a really important piece that a lot of people in daily life is missing. And part of it is they don't know how. And part of it is they have this imposter thing of like, well, I'm not an athlete. Why do I need to do mental strength training?
All right.
So I bought into this whole concept of sports psychology, mindset, mindfulness in like the late 1990s when I was a 14, 15-year-old kid. playing for my state, about to go to the national championships in soccer. And we got this performance coach, I'm doing air quotes here for people who aren't watching. We got this performance coach in, and basically she laid us down in a room, lights off, candles, incense burning, and she guided us in meditation. Now, we're 14, 15-year-old boys in the mid-90s here in Australia, not a massive sport in that country, but I bought into it. I was like, this stuff is awesome. We did muscle relaxation. We did breathing protocols. And I was like, this is fantastic. This is one way that I can train my body to be a better athlete. All my teammates were like messing about, slapping people in the head and kicking people in the butt and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I bought into it. So from the age of 14, I had been practicing mental strength training my entire life. So then you get to an adventure. It's a long way of sort of setting up my answer to your question. But I got to running down Mount Everest in a really, really sorry and sad state. And I had done 30 years of mental strength training almost. So it was things like, okay, focus on what I can control. How do you do that? Well, be present. How do you be present? Okay, I've got self-aware. Need to be self-aware of what I'm feeling, what I need, what are my key fundamentals. I need to eat, I need to drink, I can't, okay, I need to keep comfortable. So I had all these tools that I was able to use and in this toolbox. So I would get to a point where I would be able to keep putting one foot in front of the other, get to the bottom of the mountain, and then something else happened, or I felt ill, I vomited, I needed to go to the bathroom, I needed to have a nap, I fell over, all these things. I was like, okay, what can I control? Being self-aware of how I feel and what do I need, what are my key fundamentals, and being present in what I'm trying to achieve and knowing why I'm there in the first place. And the flip side with this was I had no other option, because it was either get myself down or get a helicopter, and helicopters are way too expensive, so I just had to figure out a way. So it's being able to have these tools. However, these tools only come from you spending time prior to the adversity, prior to the trauma, prior to the adventure you go on, and sharpening them. So it's understanding what they are, how to use them, and then practicing them before you need them. So when you do need them, you can go like, boom, here's a toolbox. Okay, what's going to work? Does this one work? No. Does that one work? No. Does this one work? Oh, yes, that's helped me take that next step. And that's how I've been able to continually achieve these big ultra endurance goals. I think it's also helped me move past my mental health issues that I went through as well, because that was always installed with me of using different procedures and protocols to help me move forward in life. And now this is what I speak about on stage to audiences from different industries in the corporate world, to conferences and stuff like that, to athletic teams, to professional clubs, and just trying to share my knowledge as you do in what your line of work is paying it forward, to use your phrase. I have these skills, these experience, and I just want other people to use them to help them be the best that they can be.
Yeah, so you talk about these tools and starting meditation at an early age, and that's something that you've been practicing, like you said, for 30 years. What do you recommend someone doing if they want to start, utilizing meditation and being present and things like that into their lives?
Carve out a time in a day and dedicate that to your meditation time. I think that is the first step. Don't just say, yeah, I'm going to meditate 5 times a day. I'm going to meditate for 20 minutes or whatever. Actually put it in your diary. It's a non-negotiable. Right now, I would just be like, whenever. If you know that you've got this 5-minute break between finishing work and picking the kids up from school, and you walk to your car at the office and you drive 20 minutes, but you've got a bit of a buffer. Boom. When you go into the car, that's when it starts. That's your meditation time. Make a time daily that you can actually stop and allow yourself a chance to be present. So dedicating a time to it. And I like to tell people who are asking me that same question is, don't start with half an hour. Start with a minute. Start with a minute. Just set your phone timer, throw it next to you, and just sit there and focus on one thing, whether it's your breath, whether it's a sound, whether it's a smell, but just try and use one sense and focus on one thing. And that is my advice. Like, I don't really know if there's a whole lot of science involved in that. Like I've read a little bit on neuroscience and on meditation. You know, I've read all those different studies. We know they're helpful, but what I've just prescribed, I just feel like it's a great place to start. And then figure out what works. Focusing on your breath. If you're like, wow, this is really cool. I get lost in that minute goes in no time. I'm doing it 5 minutes now. I can focus on my breath and I just feel really calm afterwards. Fantastic. You found what works for you. Sometimes I've had people who have gone like, I just like to focus on one sound and it can zone me out. Or a smell, I can smell something, can I just focus on that? And I found that being really helpful. And even moving. Sometimes I will just go for a walk and just try and not feel or think of anything, and I'll let the thoughts come and I'll let them go. But I'll just do it while I'm moving. So I think it's finding what works for you, but at the same time, breaking it down to just start with like a minute a day and then going from there and when you know sort of what works for you. But it's about initially dedicating that time to just start and do it consistently.
Yeah, I love that because it is something you have to practice. It doesn't like just, I meditate. I'm not like, I try to be consistent. There are days I miss, but like usually do like 10 minutes or whatever it is in the morning. And it definitely takes time, but it's like anything else. It's a craft that you have to sort of just practice. And is this something that you continue to do pretty much on a daily basis or for yourself?
I would love to say, yeah, I meditate every day, but the reality is I don't. You know, I'm human. I forget. I'm lazy. Sometimes I couldn't be bothered. Like I know that's the most ridiculous thing to say. I couldn't be bothered to sit still and focus on my breath, or I couldn't be bothered to sit there and have no thoughts. Like it's so silly saying it, but I'm human. Like, and I'm not perfect by any means. And I talk about I've got all these tools and I've been practicing mental strength and meditation for all this amount of times, but I'm not perfect. And I don't do this every day. Like I do it most days and it might only be for a couple of minutes. It might be 5 times 1 minute where I will stop. And these days I don't need to dedicate a time because I will always make time if I realize I'm into the afternoon and I feel I just need a minute. Then I'm like, okay, boom, I need to just turn my phone off or I need to set a timer on my phone, throw it to the other side of the room and just be still and be present and do that meditation process, whether it's 5 minutes, whether it's 1 minute, whether it's 20 minutes, half an hour, whatever. So I am like that. I do probably, if I had to say on average, I would say 4 to 5 times a week, like 4 to 5 days a week, I would say. Some weeks it's every day, you know, depending on my situation. I travel a lot and sometimes I just forget because everything changes, my schedule changes. And they're all excuses. I completely understand that. I'm not trying to paint a perfect picture that, no, I do this and I've been doing it for so long and I'm amazing at it. I'm not. I'm human like everyone else. Just like I have negative thoughts when I'm dealing with adversity. Yeah. Am I always less negative? No. I have negative thoughts. I think detrimental things. But what I realized is because I've done all this work in the past, because I've sharpened all these tools, because I've spent probably years practicing, focusing, developing, curating all these things to help me be who I am today from a mental strength, from a mindfulness perspective. When I have negative thoughts, when they come into my head, or when I don't create time to meditate, I catch myself really quick. Instead of letting that negative thought spiral for a minute, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, a day, a week, a year, and go down a really, really deep hole, I'll catch it within a minute, within 30 seconds and go, whoa, where's that coming from? Okay, let's understand that. Why am I thinking that? Is there any truth to it? Where did I get to this point? Okay. And then all of a sudden that reverse, to use my gear stick analogy from being less negative, I'm going backwards. I'm having negative thoughts. But instead of flooring it, as soon as I feel the car moving backwards, I'm like, whoa, 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 put the foot on the brake. I'm still in reverse, put the foot on the brake. Let's figure out what's going on here. And then that allows me to then move from being negative, having a negative thought, but not acting on it, and then taking the steps forward to be less negative and then be positive out of it. So unlike everyone else, I still have negative thoughts and have, detrimental thoughts and stuff like that and don't meditate for days on end. but I catch myself pretty quick because of all the work I've done and the principles and the processes that I've implemented into my life, and I continue to practice on a daily basis as well.
Yeah, I love that, and I'm big into like trying to stay present. It's not always that easy. I'm a big golfer, and you don't want to, that you don't want to get ahead of yourself. You don't want to think about what just happened, and so I think having, like you said, tools in the toolbox can help you in sport, but also just in life when things are chaotic. It's like being able to focus on your breath and just stay present. Easier said than done, but the more you do it on your own, whether it's 5-10 minutes, whatever it is, you can apply that to other areas, and it can pay dividends.
Yeah, 100%. And the catchphrase I use for myself is respond, don't react. And for me, the difference is reacting is taking action or not taking action, whether it's verbally, physically, emotionally, without thinking. That's reacting. Responding or to have a response is to create space between the stimulus and the action, like Viktor Frankl mentioned in his book, Search for Meaning, is be able to create space so you can think. That's the difference between reacting and responding. Having an ability to stop and think before you take action, whether it's physically, mentally, emotionally, or that action you take might be not taking an action.
Right.
Not acting on an emotion, not saying that thing, not doing that thing. That could be the correct response. But if you just react and do it without thinking, then that can be detrimental. So my catchphrase is always respond, don't react. And I do that by doing my best to be present and thinking about what I should or shouldn't be doing in that next moment.
Well, Luke, this is great. We could probably go on and on for a long time, but what's next up for you? I know you're doing a lot of speaking, and what's on your agenda for the next year or so?
Yeah, next year or so is my calendar's getting booked up with speaking gigs, which is great. I'm letting that play out because I'm enjoying speaking more and more often around the world and hosting different events and speaking at conferences and just delivering my talk, my messages, my story as well, which is pretty cool. You've got a snippet of it. So I'm letting that play out. I am working through an injury at the moment. Just one of those random ones. I can't really put my finger on it. But I'm still training, but I'm not putting anything big in the calendar because I know my next, my next nine months is pretty busy. But as I said before, I've got some big things in the pipeline that I'm starting to have conversations with, because obviously these things take time to organize. Like, I'm potentially doing something that's a month long. So it takes a lot more than just 1 month to organize it. So sometimes these things take years, and I'm in the process of doing that and then writing out my training plan to make sure I'm fit for that. So I'm in that process. But yeah, so that's what's happening with me. And, I've sort of committed to sitting down and starting writing another book. I've co-authored a couple other books as well as my own autobiography, Chasing Extreme. So I want to, and it's basically going to be filled with all these principles and processes that I use and the stories that have created them. So it's not just a sort of a step-by-step book or these are all the things that I use. It's actually got stories behind them. So I enjoy writing. So I've committed to some time each week and each month to start that process. I've got loads of notes, but just formatting into that. So, hopefully in the next year or two, I'll have some sort of first draft and see where we go with that.
Wow, that's exciting. And what about actually? I'll forget to ask this last question, so I wanted to ask it: is what one tip would you give an individual that wanted to get their body back to what it once was, like 10, 15 years ago? What one tip would you give that individual?
Wow.
I know it's a big one.
That is a big question. What is one tip to get their body back 10, 15 years ago? I would say be kind to yourself, because you're not the same person you were 10 to 15 years ago. I think that's probably the biggest thing. I heard a quote I need to actually spend some time and dig it up to figure out who initially said it. I've seen many people claim it, but the quote was something like, a man who views his life at 40 the same as when he was 20 has wasted 20 years. And I think that sort of sticks with what I said as a tip is be kind to yourself, because you're not the same person you were 10, 15 years ago. So, give yourself a break if you miss a session, if you eat a piece of chocolate cake, if you whatever, if you can't hit those targets or those steps or running or playing squash or playing tennis, you can't do it as much as you used to. Be kind to yourself because you're actually doing something. So I think that's really important, to not beat yourself up if you are actually taking steps forward. That's my one tip.
I like that. I completely agree. Because definitely, like, the way I train now is a lot different than the way I trained when I was in my 20s. And you have to sort of...
And it should be, right?
It should be.
Yeah, because, would any of us really want to be doing all the same stuff we were doing in our 20s?
No, not really.
Yeah.
Well, this is great, Luke. I appreciate it. Where's the best place for people to find you?
Yeah, I'm really easy to find online. You can go to luketyburski.com. All my social media is Luke Tyburski. You can type my name into Amazon and you'll see my documentary. You'll see my documentaries, there's 2 on there. You'll see my book. Just my name's, there's not a lot of us out there. There's a few, but not a lot of us, but I'm pretty much at the top of all the searches. So social media, luketyburski.com, it's all there. Reach out, and I do all my own social media. So if you've got a question, if you've got a thought, if you just want to say hi, do reach out. I'm really easy to get a hold of, and I'll reply to you and let me know what you learned from this conversation with Brian and I as well. I'd love to hear one thing that you learned from this conversation as well.
Love that. Well, I will put links in the show notes. And Luke, thanks so much for coming on and sharing all this.
My pleasure, Brian. It's been a blast. Thank you for having me on.
Thanks for listening to the Get Lean, Eat Clean podcast. I understand there are millions of other podcasts out there, and you've chosen to listen to mine, and I appreciate that. Check out the show notes at briangrin.com for everything that was mentioned in this episode. Feel free to subscribe to the podcast and share it with a friend or family member that's looking to get their body back to what it once was. Thanks again, and have a great day.